Thank you so much for joining us for episode number 13 of the Be Life podcast, coming to you live from the studios of Canton Nazarene Church. Our goal is to bring you an honest and practical view, not of religion, but of a relationship with Jesus Christ, and to help you get closer and bring your life closer to the way you were created. I hope you enjoy this podcast. If you do, I would hope that you would subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on all other platforms. As we often do, I want to welcome a young lady with us today, and her name is Brianna McQueen. And I'm so proud of the fact that Canton Nazarene Church is a lighthouse for all to come, no matter the age, the background, the situation that we find ourselves in. And I want to also warn you, there is a danger that when you look at someone's life, like Brianna's or mine or anybody's, our tendency is to compare ourselves to those stories and say, well, they're really messed up, or they're worse than I am, and I don't really need this. Not like they do. They needed Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is a crutch to help them get through. All of these excuses that come your way when you start comparing your life to someone else's. But the truth is that all of us lead our lives in quiet desperation. When it's dark, when we're alone, we suddenly realize that we're not all we seem to be. And some of us are better in putting on masks. Some of us are better than others in disguising ourselves and coming across like we've got it all together. But I'm telling you, we were all designed and created in the image of our Creator and our God. And until we discover a relationship with that Creator, we will always be at the mercy of how the outside world affects us and how others define us. And we become like a leaf in a hurricane being pulled in all kinds of directions. And so as we have this discussion, as I have this discussion with Brianna today, a lovely and remarkable young lady, I want you to look past her specific story and understand that this is all of our stories. It's my story. It's your story. It may be a little different. It may be disguised more, but it is your story. And it's all of our stories. And Brianna, thank you so much for coming in. It takes a lot of courage for a young lady, a young person, anybody, to come in and share some of the struggles that you've been through. So I thank you so much for your courage in doing this.
Well, thank you for having me.
If you could, what I'd like to do is have this discussion. And at times I want to stop. I want to talk. I want to ask you some deeper questions. I want to find out what was the motivating factors in certain things and all of that. But I want you to tell your story. So I'm just going to let you start where you want. And let's start hearing what your story was about and your journey to find who you really are.
Okay. Well, the earliest that I can start from, where I can remember where most of the details took place, when I was 16, I got with my kids' dad. I was still in high school. At the time, I was introduced to drugs and alcohol as well.
By whom?
By him.
Okay.
And,
Was he older?
he's a year and a half older than me.
Okay.
And it was just kind of natural, to be introduced to those things. Being at that age in school, it seemed like everybody was doing it. So when I did get with him, I started doing it as well. So it wasn't uncommon for you to find me every weekend in some alley in somebody's car, just getting completely obliviated. I did pull the wool over my parents' eyes for quite some time, but then they were starting to see what was going on. What's even worse is I was dragging my little sister around with me too.
Okay.
He
How old was
began.
she?
She's 2 years younger than me.
Okay.
She was.
So she was about 14 at the time.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So and at the time I thought, it was just fun, I had so many goals. I wanted to be a Marine. I wanted to be a cop at one point in time in my life, a judge, a lawyer, all kinds of things that is completely the opposite of where my path took me.
Yeah.
So when I graduated high school, I moved in with him. And at 19, we had our first child, my son. Um, the drinking and drugging did not stop.
Okay.
There was so much jealousy in the relationship, mental abuse, physical abuse. I myself was an abuser at the time too. We were both abusing each other. At 20, I had my daughter, and it still continued. The fighting was worse though. It got worse and worse. My physical, the emotional, and we put a band-aid over all our problems by drinking.
Mm-hmm.
We took our kids with us too. Uh, and we'd come home, and usually the night ended with us physically fighting, screaming at each other, saying just some of the worst things, beating each other down.
Let me ask you a question. Where you think back on this right now, and what was your mindset at this point as far as how you felt about yourself? How did were you did you like yourself? Did you think this was how it's supposed to be? Or did you go to bed at night and think, I don't like this. I don't want to be like this, but I can't stop. How did you feel?
Many nights I went to bed like that. I was pretty beaten down. My self-worth was gone. Independence, I had none. Uh, to dress up and to feel good, that was not allowed. I could not do that. I was called every name in the book if I tried to do that. Um, I had no job, no license, never even had a car, just in this house all the time while he took care of everything. And then it got, I hated myself.
So there was a lot of shame.
Yes.
And the shame, a lot of people think that sin, and we're going to get in, I want to get into this a little bit, but sin and guilt and things like that that happen, they think of those as a judicial kind of thing, like, oh, I sinned against this and that. But the shame of being worthless and feeling like you have no value causes you to sin, correct? I mean, so
Yes.
you kept acting out how you felt in your worth and your value and your shame in yourself.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes.
Did it then progress and get worse as the shame, as you acted out more and more, the shame became more and you kept getting deeper and deeper? Am I am I am I off on that, Brie?
No, you are very correct. It got much worse. It got to the point there's one thing I was for sure of, like, I would have done anything for my children. That was the only thing that I held on to was my children. And it gotten to the point where I tried to take my own life over it. We had domestic violence cases. Every time I'd leave with my kids, I'd end up coming back. My kids were brushed around all over the place during this time because I just didn't feel like I could take care of them on my own.
Mhm.
Um, and then I'd go back and the fighting was still there, but
Why'd you go back?
like as I mentioned, I didn't have no independence. I graduated high school, moved right in with him, so I had no career that was started, and I got pregnant immediately. So I was the my mom put it in terms barefoot and pregnant, and just the stay at home mom. He paid all the bills, he went to work, and I got to stay home and take care of the kids. And I didn't realize that this was a problem in the beginning. I just always thought we'd get it together, but we never did. It ended when I got my kids taken from it.
Okay. So they're his kids too,
Yes.
but they social workers, the courts? Who came and took the kids?
When I tried to take my own life after a real bad physical fight one night,
And how did that happen? What did you do? Are you
I was so when I say, like, I was so hopeless and
Yeah.
I really hated myself, my mind was so messed up. I didn't even know what to think anymore, and he would say things like, "These kids are better off without you," you know? So I those things sunk into my head, and
Sure.
I really felt like I couldn't take it no more. My weight, I was maybe 90 pounds soaking wet.
Wow.
Anxiety constantly, depression constantly, and I didn't know at the time. I took a whole bottle of niacin pills, and I thought that would do me in, you know? Like, this is it. I just don't wanna I can't live this life no more. So I ended up going to the hospital and the doctors tell me, "Well, you know, niacin pills aren't gonna kill you, but, you know, we're gonna keep you here because you tried to do
Yes.
it."
Yeah. It wa
So, yeah. That night after before I took those pills, he was up and he bit my nose really bad. I remember getting punched in my head several times, and, of course, I was physical back too because it was natural for us, you know, just to fight each other. Um, and when I got to the hospital, I was so out of it because this is a night coming home after drinking and drugging. Then we got into that physical fight, plus on top of the depression, the anxiety I always had in my head was just never right. Um, when I called my mom gets there, she immediately knows what happened. My family has dealt with this many times in our relationship. There's been times they've come over and my daughter is literally pointing the spots on the wall like that's mommy's blood. Patches of my hair was all over the floor, you know. It and we still always tried to make it work. I don't understand now. I just can't understand how I did that, you know. So my mom goes and tells the nurses what happened,
Mm.
and the nurses immediately get CPS involved. And then they call the police. This is probably my third time dealing with this with the
Mhm.
police. And so he's done went to jail once. And then I was completely lost. How am I going to take care of my kids again? I don't even know what to do. How can I get a job? I have two kids. No one's going to babysit. I have no transportation. You know, I have no work history. So it was very hard for me to get out of this
No
relationship.
worth,
No
no
worth.
value,
Yes.
hopeless.
Yes.
What next?
When the cops came in and questioned me, I tried not to tell the truth because I couldn't afford for him to get arrested. Mhm.
After he bit your nose, punched you, pulled your hair out, told you you'd be better off, the kids would be better off without you, you still felt that that was the best place for you to be.
Yes. Yes, because I knew that I could be with my kids. Despite all that, like, we loved our children, and that was what was keeping this nest together, you know? Like, we knew that we didn't need to be with each other. We knew I didn't understand that I needed professional help. I didn't understand that an addiction has rose. I didn't at this time I just didn't understand. I just thought, you know, maybe if I could do this, maybe if I could do this, everything would be better. But by now my life was completely
But
unmanageable.
you realize that, and when I say things, you could say, Joe, that you're way off. Feel free to say that.
Okay.
But the addiction, the drinking, the drugs, the addiction, all those things were symptoms of a much greater worthless shame feeling of not having any value to anybody. Am I correct?
Oh yes.
And so the addiction, the drugs, the alcohol that numb you as you try to escape feeling that way. And you understand that now.
Oh yes.
And the other thing I wanted to bring up, I've read things because you're, Bree, most of us are not different than you. Sometimes it spirals. And in people's lives like yours, it spirals deeper and deeper, but we've all spiraled some phase of our lives. Someone either brings us out of it or we bring ourselves out of it somehow because of circumstances sometimes that are beyond even us.
Mm.
But we're created to be in harmony with others. Christ or God is a triune God. And I want you to understand Christ or God is a triune God. There's three persons in this Godhead that work in complete harmony. And we were created that way to have relationships with others, like you and I, like Zach, like all of us. We're created that way. But without that understanding, without that relationship with God who created us, our relationships become a mess because it's supposed to be I and you. I'm equal, you're equal. We bring something to the table and we work in harmony. When we get out of track, like you were in this situation, it becomes you becomes zero.
Yes.
And it's you. So it's zero you. And all of it's coming back on you, and you feel worthless, like you have nothing to bring to the table. He was doing all the stuff. He was paying all the bills. You keep saying that. And I was just there. From his point of view, he becomes it, where you become not you, but an it. And in those relationships, we lose track of who we are, and it becomes a mess. So I'm gathering as you started understanding this and coming to grips with it, that there was no way out of this until you started getting a kind of a pull from God saying, Bree, you do have value. You do have worth. But you need to understand who I am so that you understand where you get your worth and your value. Am I correct?
You're very correct. Yes.
So explain how you finally started. I mean, you're at the pits now. Your kids are taken. So your whole meaning in life was your kids.
Yes.
They're gone. You're still in this relationship. How'd you get out of it?
The state stepped in.
Okay.
After, telling the police that night what happened, the real story, because my parents were there and my mom wasn't going to let me lie. They went and took him to jail, and CPS immediately came and placed my kids with their grandmother, his mom. And after that, there was a no contact order with me and him. They've seen that I went up to bat to fight for him twice now with the domestic violence. They wasn't listening to my side. It was their decision.
They were done with that.
Yes. Yeah. The courts, everyone.
Because you would have lied again?
I would have. Yes.
Okay.
I did. I had a story made up, everything, went and got with the lawyer, told everybody who's seen the incident that night what to go along with the story, everything. Because that I had no self-worth. I just didn't think I could do it.
I get it.
Without his help.
I get it. So now they said no more contact.
Yep.
So where'd you go?
Then that was probably one of the worst times in my life. I've moved back in with my parents so many times. So finally I burned that bridge. I burned so many bridges. My aunt, I moved in and out with her so many times in this relationship. My kids were, like I said, they were brushed around everywhere. I was brushed around everywhere. So I really didn't have nowhere to go. I ended up laying on my couch for like 2 weeks straight. Then a neighbor came over and knocked on the door to feed me, to make sure I was okay.
Wow.
And then it got a little fuzzy. After that, I remember my addiction grew worse. I started hanging out with some of the wrong people. Like I said, I just had no will to live.
The addiction at that time, did it get really hard stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
I began injection.
Okay.
IV using. And once it got to that point, it didn't matter what I was using. I would use anything. Yes, I was like a lab rat. I'd do anything and everything with the goal in mind to take my own life. I didn't want to live no more.
Do you feel alone?
Very alone. The pain of losing my kids haunted me every day. Mm-hmm. I would be looking for them everywhere. I was homeless on the streets. If I'd go into Walmart, if I'd go anywhere, the obsession of looking for my kids grew too painful just to see their faces, the guilt and the shame that I held was just too much to deal with. So when I would use, I didn't feel those things.
Hmm.
Um, it's it's sad to say, but I didn't think about my kids often when I would use. But
And you
it's
try and use more and more.
yes, more and more with each time with the thought in mind, like this will this be my last time? Is this going to be the one that takes me out?
Were you hoping?
I was hoping every day, every day. I would literally beg for God to take me.
You were actually talking to God at this point?
Hmm.
So you knew there was a God.
I've always known there was a God. My mom would have, I was in church. The first church I went to was Church of Nazarene down in New Philadelphia. I was a
Okay.
little girl in Tuscarawas County. Then when we moved up here, I went to the Church of the Nazarene off of Smith
Okay.
in Canton. So I've been to church ever since I was a little girl. I've always known there was a God.
But that God wasn't real to you, or was he?
He was real in my heart. I knew that there was a God. Now, the fact that did I want to follow him
Mm,
was what was questionable because of all the hurt and the loss that I've experienced, and of also the drugs take a toll on your mind as well. You
right.
you don't think right. You not at all.
Yeah. But the drugs happen for a reason. They happen because of something deeper.
Hmm.
I mean, the drugs were to mask things in your own life, right?
Yes.
And so you're asking God to take your life at this point. And you're trying to do it yourself. You're trying to help, but he doesn't.
No.
And you don't do a good job of it either.
No. I literally would say I am such a mess up in life. I can't even take my own life. Like I'm like, I don't get it. I've tried many times. I've tried to take my own life and it just never happened.
Now what? Because you're at the end now.
Yeah, I am just it's
You're rock bottom.
the rock bottom. Yes.
How do you escape?
This went on for about 4 years.
Really?
Yes. I didn't see my children for 4 years.
Okay.
One, because their guardians wouldn't let me come around in the shape I was in, and that's completely understandable. I thank them every day that my kids never had to see me like that.
Yeah.
Um, my sister, she passed away of an overdose, and I
Was
was
this the 14-year-old
with
that you were taking along with you?
yes. At the
Okay.
time, we were in our adult lives though, but she's yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And that just was enough for me. I grew angry with God after my sister passed. Like, why did you take her and not me? Like she was fighting, to get her kids back. She was so close to getting her children back. Um, and she went out one time with her friend and she relapsed, and that one time it took her life.
Wow.
Um, she wanted to live, she had a lot to live for. And then you have me every day trying to, and I'm like, why would you do that? Why are you making me suffer? Why would you not take me and take her?
Right.
The pain I've had to witness my parents go through was
Oh yeah.
it was unbearable. I felt a lot of guilt for my sister losing her life. I'm in grief counseling today for it. Because I've realized now that is one thing that leads me back is dealing with guilt. What pulled me out is
I want you to understand something though. Guilt is better than shame. Now get this. Guilt means that you have empathy. You have sympathy. There's feelings there that are causing that guilt. Whereas when you're in shame, you don't have anything. You don't feel anything. So guilt is like coming up, Bree. It's a step up a little bit. You know, you're out of that. You're in a place where you at least have empathy and caring.
yes,
You understand that?
yes.
So now you're all right. You're at the point your sister just committed suicide. It's kind of a jolt. Is that the jolt that kind of gets you out of it a little bit?
Um, Kinda. Uh, to be honest, when I got the news that she passed, I immediately went and tried to take my own life.
Okay.
It was my mom begging for me to come home. She didn't she knew, that if I didn't come home, that I would be next. So I went home and I stayed with my mom during the week of my sister's burial, detoxing at my mom's house.
Okay.
It was very hard to, when I went through the withdrawals and stuff, I would go hide in the bathroom because I didn't want my parents to see me going through that while they're already dealing with the death of a child.
Yeah.
Um,
But they knew.
they knew.
Yeah.
They knew. My mom, she can tell you crazy stories of what it was like that week for me living there.
Yeah.
But I didn't stay there. I ended up going back out. That wasn't enough for me yet. Finally, one day I was exhausted. I was exhausted from living on the streets, living in abandoned houses, going from motel to motel, being in dangerous situations. Um, I've done some messed up things to people to get my high. I've had terrible things done to me. I made the call to my mom and told her I was ready, and she got me in a treatment. Yes.
Where?
This was Neil Kennedy in Youngstown was my first treatment, and I loved it. It was a great program. That's where I got all the knowledge that I needed. When I got home from Neil Kennedy, I got the job, I got the nice car. I did everything that made me, in society's eyes, better.
Yes. You became better at disguising.
Yes. Yes. However, I slowly started using again, started out with alcohol, and then it started out with drugs, and then, up until last year, 2023, I was probably just doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up catching a few charges on September in 2023. One's a domestic violence against my mother. My mother, yes. I got 2 gun charges and a drug charge.
Wow.
And I've never been in trouble with the law in my life. And, I still didn't know I had a problem. I still didn't see it.
You did. You had to know.
I knew, but I thought as long as, I could keep it under control and,
Disguise it.
Yes,
Yes.
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 It was everybody else's fault. Never
Yeah.
mine.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I get that. But you understand though that you're not unique. People do this. They do these things.
Yeah, I was pretty notorious for it.
Yeah. Well, that's that. You learn how to cope, and you learn how to. It becomes that inward focus. It's all about you, and so no one else really matters, and so they could be blamed for it. It's all their fault. It's God's fault. It's everybody's fault. It's not my fault.
Oh, yes.
But we're all like that. We're all like that. So, how'd you get in another place? Was this your choice, or did finally the courts say you got to go get help?
When I got lucky, I got 3 years of probation instead of 3 years of prison.
Okay.
And at this point in time, it was drinking. Drinking, I could not stop. I had the shakes every day if I didn't have a drink in me. I couldn't keep a single thought. I got the hot flashes. I would literally cry to get alcohol because it took such a toll on my body without having it. And there was no God in my life at this time. By now, I had completely written God off. But as you've stated, the addiction, it was a big part. Me not having that self-worth and then feeding into the addiction, and your head's just messed up from all this stuff. You don't know what's up, you don't know what's down, you don't know right from wrong. You just know one thing, and you want to get your fix.
And I don't want to make this yes, I do. I don't care. I want to make this spiritual. Satan had you right where he wanted you. He wanted to destroy your life, because I'm going to tell you what, you are an amazing lady. I said this to someone, you're just vivacious, and you know what that means. That just means you're attractive, and I don't mean physically as much as people are attracted to you. Your smile, your joy, your the all everything about you, Bree, is just attractive. And so God has plans for you. He's had plans for you. Satan's role is to derail that and to destroy you and to not let you see how loved you are, how valued you are, how full of worth you are, and how important you are to of us who are around you. And so he had you. He had you. And as long as he could keep you there, he thwarts God's plans for your life.
Mhm.
And so that's what was going on at this point. You're completely away from God. The shame that you look at the book of Genesis and Adam and Eve when they were walking. It says when they were created, they were walking in the garden with God.
Mhm.
They were completely naked, and it says, and they were without shame. Immediately, when Satan, as a serpent, got them to turn away from God and to him and to listen to his lies, and they sinned, what happened? Immediately, they hid themselves from each other.
Mhm.
They hid themselves from God. Immediately, they realized they were naked and they were shamed. And what else did they do? They started blaming each other.
No, yeah.
It
Yes.
wasn't me,
Yes.
God. It was her. It was this woman you gave me.
Mhm.
She made me do it. That's our history. That's who we are. And that's where you were.
Yes.
So how does this end? What happened?
Um, well,
Does this all make sense?
first, yes, yes, when you just mentioned that, Satan had me completely manipulated. Um, and it's funny that you mentioned that because he did. He took me away from at this time, right before going into treatment, I was living with my boyfriend. Thank God. I'm very fortunate to still have him in my life today from all the things that, was going on.
This is a different guy.
No, yeah, not my kids'
Okay,
dad.
all right.
I've been with his name is Mario. I've been with him for 4 years.
Okay.
Great man. So he completely alienated me from the entire family. Satan did.
Yes.
He completely manipulated because, in my opinion, he knows I was already feeling some kind of way towards God for, all the suffering that I've been through and with my sister and everything. And he used that to his fullest to get in my head
Yeah.
to the point where I was so manipulated. I thought, well, what if we're being taught wrong? What if we're being taught that God is the good guy, but he's really the bad guy and
Wow.
Satan's the good guy?
Yeah.
And I started following the Satanic Bible. That's how bad he manipulated me. And when I grew up my whole life knowing there was a God. So that really hurt me to not have God in my life. But deep down in my heart, I knew that I wanted God in my life, but I just couldn't bring myself to accept him again.
Was it, forgive me for this, but was it that you couldn't accept him, or was it you had reached a point where you knew you were thinking he could never accept me?
That as well. That as well. Yes. Especially after, like I said, going completely the opposite way.
Yeah.
So when I did get on probation, at this point, all I remember is dark days. I remember dark days and I remember terrible things happening. Um, and I knew exactly what it was because I invited that into my life.
Yes.
And everything was just a blur. My head was just always in a daze. It was terrible. So about a month after going in and reporting to my probation officer, and this is 3 years of prison I had that I've done build up a wonderful relationship with my children. Through all this again, they rely on me. I get to see them. I get to talk to them whenever I want. I couldn't stop drinking. I couldn't stop using. So every day when I have to call every night for color code and I can't go in there and I can't drop a clean one for them. But every day I'm telling myself, okay, I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit because if not, they're going to take me to prison. Finally, it was when I was on my way to see my probation officer. I had to swing into the drive-through and I had to chug down 3 beers before I could even go see my probation officer because I didn't want him to think there was something wrong with me because I can't have a coherent thought
Mm.
without having alcohol in my system. And at this point, I'm back to hating myself again. I don't want to rely on this substance to be able to get by through a day, but I have to at this point. I can't function. So I went and told my probation officer after just being tired of going in there and not being able to drop a clean one and being scared and having that worry over me. Is this going to be the time when they're going to like, hey, no, we're going to take you? I'm like, I need inpatient treatment. I was like, and I'm bawling my eyes out because now I'm admitting this, and it's fine. I'm crying because it felt so freeing to get it out. And I knew that as soon as I got to that inpatient treatment, I was going to get the help I needed. I was probably one of the very few who went into treatment happy and not down. Like I'm happy because I've been through it before, and I know that when I leave this treatment, I'm gonna have everything I need to start my new life over.
Wow.
So he agreed to it. He said yes, and when you get done, he goes, we'll continue on with our treatment plan, and it's been great ever since. And
Well, but that doesn't tell me how you came to know to understand that the Lord valued you and you had worth and he loved you and he cared for you and his grace and his mercy and
yes,
all those things, Bree, because somehow that had to happen. And somehow it took that to make to finally bring you to the point where you're at now. So how did that happen? How'd you meet God again?
that happened in treatment. Like I said, God, he was always there. And I spoke about it many times in treatment when, we get to all those girls, we speak about our lives and things that we've done. And, you know, um, and that was one thing that it was one of the biggest downfalls in my life. One of the things that hurt me the most is not being able to accept him and knowing that I wanted to. There was a woman in there. Her name's Julia, and I owe it to my counselor, Miss Tammy, as well. Um, Julia had this glow on her. I just spoke with her yesterday as well too. I love her to death, and she is just so Christ centered. Anytime she spoke, it was the Lord's word. She taught me a lot about the Bible. And as soon as I seen Julia, I'm like, I want that. Like, I want to have my faith like that again. So I started observing, and just watching her do her thing. And, I explained to her my situation. And she's like, I'll do a Bible study with you. We're going to meet. And she gave me this paper and she explained some parts of the Bible to me that I had no idea about before. And I just was drawn to her. Like it's like almost she had this light over her. Like God was beaming a light over her for me to see.
Or through her?
Yes, it's amazing. I
Yeah.
do. I owe it all to her. Well, not I put in some work
I
too,
know
but
what I know what you're
yes.
saying.
And then my counselor, Miss Tammy,
Yeah.
very God fearing woman. My gosh. Anybody who had Miss Tammy as a counselor loved her. When she spoke with power. And she gives it all to God, everything. Then when I went to her and told her, hey, I really want to get back right with the Lord again,
Right.
she started doing one-on-one Bible studies with me.
Wow.
And it was just seeing them too, and like just the light that was around them. And like I said, I knew in my heart of hearts that God was there. He was there. It was just I needed to be brought back to him. I needed to get out of this darkness that I was in. I needed to be guided back to the path to him. And I was in Deliverance House.
And you gave your life to the Lord.
Yes, I did.
And you allowed his grace and his mercy and his love, which was always there for you. You allowed it to finally wash over you. Correct?
Yes.
It's kind of like standing in an ocean, isn't it? I mean, you stand in the ocean and the waves keep coming and all these events keep coming in your life. And some of them are mild, some of them knock you down, some of them do this, but you get kind of get used to the waves coming. and you think that's your life, and you forget to look down and realize that you've been standing in the ocean of grace and love your whole life. He's cared for you, and you're remarkable. You need to understand this. That glow that you say comes from your friend who you talked to yesterday, that glow is now on you. It really is, Bree.
Well, thank you.
It really is. I mean, I notice it. My wife has noticed. I mean, it's like when we're around you, there's just a light that comes out of you. There's a light. You are alive.
Mm-hmm.
You are reflecting the glory of God. And you do it as well or better than anyone I have ever been around. And I mean that. Do you now understand how much you're loved?
Very much. I pray. One thing I never prayed out loud in my life. Um, and I think it was more because I felt embarrassed, like whether someone's going to laugh at me or
Yeah.
whatever. And then it's sad, but with today's world, people are just offended so easily.
Yes.
And I started praying out loud in Deliverance House, and at first it was a little, what do I say? What do I do? Now every night it's just natural.
Yeah.
And I thank him every day for not turning his back on me.
Yeah.
Even though I've turned mine on him.
Yeah.
And for bringing me back.
He never did turn his back on you. He never turned his back on me. There were so many times in my life where I was the same, where I knew he was there, but I ignored him. Very similar, very similar. But he never stopped. He never stops loving us. He created all of us, every single person in this world. He created us all in his image to have a relationship with him. And until we find that relationship with him, until we are anchored in our true creator, we can't have a good relationship. We mess him up. We always mess him up. But you know what? Now you walk in here in this church and you're loved. You're accepted. You're accepted. And here's the other part. In God, we don't have to perform to be accepted. We perform because we're accepted. We act like we act because he loves us. I love you so much. You're an amazing lady. And I mean that. And it isn't because just today. I have loved you just by being around you, just by seeing you in church. If I see you in church dancing or moving to the music and things and just being there and just being in love with God and our church, it's amazing. I want to keep, I'm proud of one thing that our church doesn't put conditions on people to belong. We don't, people come in here because if that was the case, I would never be here. If we don't put and say you have to act a certain way in order to be accepted. And because of that, we're getting more and more young people who've really gone through the fire. I just met Elijah last week and Eric and Brandon and so many people who've come into this church feeling welcome, feeling loved, feeling accepted, feeling worth. And we have to keep it that way. I would love to, maybe start a weekly Bible study with just all of us who've not been raised in the church and who struggle and who just want to be accepted. Is there anything else you want to say? before we close out?
I just hope that, this can reach through to people who have questions, who are struggling with the same things that I've struggled with, and to see the wonderful things, that God can do for us. I live a great life now.
Yeah.
Stress free, worry free. I mean, I have stresses here and there, but
Sure.
I love myself, you know.
Because he first loved you.
Yes. And because I know he's got me.
Yeah.
I'll say all the time, God's got me.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It is just amazing. I'm a member of this church. I got baptized here.
Yes.
To think that I could do that, it's just amazing. So I just really hope this can give people hope.
It will give people hope. And God will use this. And that's why I thank you so much for your courage, and because it's a hard story to tell, but you've been saved by grace, and you've been loved, and you were loved the whole time. You just had to realize that love was there,
Yes.
and realize that you were worthy because you were created in the image of God, and he gave you worth. He gives us all worth.
Yes.
He makes us, we have value because of him, not because somebody says we have value, not because I drive a nice car, not because I do this or I do that, not because I have this degree or this education or this job, not because those are all superficial, stupid things.
Yes.
The value comes in being a child of the living God and being created in his image and having a purpose
Hmm.
that goes far beyond even anything in this world. And that's where you're at. And you know, I encourage you to just bask in that love and know that we all love you too, and we care for you. And I'm happy that I need you. I need you in my life. My wife needs you in her life. We need each other in our lives. That's what we were created to be
Yes.
in this relationship. So God bless you. We're always going to be here for you. And I can't thank you enough for spending time with us. God bless you.
Thank you.
I thank you for joining us. I thank you so much for Bree. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoy it and join us every week here on the Be Life podcast. God bless you. Have a wonderful week.